All right. It is 2 minutes past the hour, 9 a.m. my time, 9:02. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We are being recorded, so we can send out this recording to everybody after. But welcome to Ambition Office Hours. I'm Mindy Whitman, Customer Success Manager. And with me today, I get to have two co-hosts, which is very exciting. I've got Kelly Berg, our VP of Customers, as well as Matt Wright, our SMB account manager. Thank you both for being here.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
On today's agenda, we're going to be discussing scorecards, your rep's playbook for success. We'll talk through why scorecards, your activity score and objective score, how to set up a scorecard, smart benchmarks and target override, our new lower is better metric, as well as some best practices. So with that, let's jump on in. So why scorecards? Well, it's a daily, weekly, or monthly accountability with long-term results. Managers have the power to create scorecards for every unique role. You can improve your playbook adoption, drive CRM adoption, and provide continuous feedback for reps. With that being said, as many of you know, when you first log in, you see your today's activities. Some of the scorecards with some of our clients are set up with weekly activities, but for the most part, it's daily activities that I've seen. What its purpose is to really set the stage as what is the perfect day? What are your employees supposed to do every day? So we always say, as a best practice, looking at setting up 3 to 5 KPIs with controllable metrics. So examples of that would be calls, emails, LinkedIn activities, outreach cadences. And throughout the day, you'll notice that on your scorecards, they turn colors. They start off with red, and as they get closer to those targets toward the end of the day, it turns into a green color. And at the top right, they'll see a percentage there of where they stand for the day. Your objective score are your monthly targets. These are typically tied to revenue. So we'll see anything from meetings held and meetings booked to new opportunities and monthly recurring revenue. Again, we always recommend that these be 1 to 3 KPIs, and these typically are the results of those daily activities. How do you set up a scorecard? Well, it's very simple, and I've provided some screenshots here to be helpful. But as you all are very aware, I'm sure, on your left-hand navigation, you'll actually click down to Administration and to Scorecards. This screen here will pop up where you will get a chance to select the role that you wish to set metrics and targets for. Once you're here, so you can see in my example that I've selected new hires. This is where we can now select the metrics that we want to design for our new hires. In this example, I've selected calls and emails. You'll need to put a target in for each of the metrics that you select. So in my example down here, how many calls per day are you wanting your employees to make? How many emails are you wanting them to make? So that is your target. You'll then need to put in the weighting of that. So is this a 50-50? Do you feel that calls are more important than emails? So in my example, I have 60% for calls, 40% for emails. The nice thing about the way that we have it all set up is that you have our smart benchmark tool. So when you're sitting here thinking, okay, how do I weight this? If you don't actually know, you can come in and use our smart benchmark tool because it uses the last 12 weeks of performance data to make a recommendation of a realistic benchmark value. So statistically speaking, we provide the 80th percentile value. Next, we have our target override button. That's up here on the right. This is extremely helpful, especially when you're ramping up new hires. I'll give you another example of what that looks like. Once you click on that button, it takes you to this screen here. I'm sorry, it's a little fuzzy, but let's pretend Betty down here is my new hire. Well, I'm not going to expect that she's going to be making 80 dials a day in her first week on the job. So this is where I can come in. You'll see here that it's under the new hire role. I've got my ambition score is my activity score, and then I have the calls. And you can see where it says 80 calls every day. So if I come in here and I could change this to where maybe I want her to start out with 10 calls and then ramp her up to 20 calls and 30 calls and so on. So you have a lot of control here, which helps your new hires feel successful. Any questions so far? I haven't even taken a look at the chat. And Kelly and Matt, do you have anything that you want to add?
My only addition is just that smart benchmarking is a really great feature, especially if you're adding a new metric into your scorecards and you want to make sure that you're on the right track and not just sort of throwing darts at a wall. It can really give you some good direction on what's been happening historically. So really important for new customers, new metric, anything around those lines to actually see, like, is this attainable? Is this motivating? I think that is a pitfall that you want to avoid, is making sure that your scorecard is attainable for your top performers and not be in a situation where even your best reps are attaining 50 or 60%. You want them to realistically feel like they could be motivated to hit that 100%.
Absolutely. That's a good point. I know that I've seen several times where when you're looking at your activity score, that's the beauty of the scorecards, is you can customize it. You can make changes as needed every month. But you definitely want your employees to be able to hit the targets. You don't want them to be super easy, but you don't want it to be impossible either. Are there any questions about setting up a scorecard right now before we pop over into the new lower is better metric? Feel free to drop any questions that you might have in the chat. Okay, if not, then I'm going to hand it over to Kelly to talk through lower is better.
Yes, happy to. So lower is better metrics, and the concept of this has, I think, been around as a request for Ambition since even before I worked here. Our scorecards were typically set up where higher is better. You want to attain the most, everything related to more. So lower is better is just an exciting way to be able to have more flexibility with your scorecards. And it really opens up scorecards potentially for other teams like support or customer success teams who really do focus on that lower metric. So essentially now with your scorecard, you could have blended metric types. So you could have your traditional higher is better, more calls, more emails, but we also now can support lower is better. So some examples here for a support team might be average handle time, transfer rate, ticket response time, open tasks in a queue. A popular one for sales or acquisition teams is starting to think about velocity, so days to close deals. If you have a rep who's just a rock star at getting that across the line, this is a really cool metric that you can start to think about, which is how quickly are they closing deals and how can we improve that number where lower is actually better. We also see with support teams like ours at Ambition, we measure things like time to resolution. So if a customer opens a support ticket and we don't want it sitting there for days and days. So we're saying, we have a goal for resolving that customer's ticket. So lower is absolutely better. And we can see how our support advisors are doing and handling things really efficiently. So this is a great new piece of the platform. And if any of you have explored it so far, fantastic. If you haven't, we do have resources where you can look at more details on how to do that. A specific example here is on talk time. And so this could be for a support team or someone who's trying to get through resolving calls quickly. So if their target is 2 minutes to actually resolve that call, anything lower than that would be better. So you would actually see that giving more credit on their scorecard than going higher than that. So a new piece of the puzzle here, and seeing a lot of creative ways that people are using that for lower is better.
Awesome.
And we're happy to take questions if anyone has them.
And again, you can find some other support on this through not only your customer success manager, but through our support team, as well as help.ambition.com.
Great. I think I might be teeing up Matt next, actually. Am I? Mindy, you want
Yes,
to go
you
to the
are.
next slide?
So.
Okay, great. So I'll introduce like Matt's journey here at Ambition, which is really cool. So Matt's been at Ambition for a while and started as an SDR, so someone who heavily used scorecard functionality. And Matt has since moved on to the customer side of the house, working with our SMB customers. But he's a real life expert on scorecard management, what it's like to be a rep who is being coached to a scorecard and looking at your scorecard throughout the day. So we're happy to have Matt here to kind of talk about some of those best practices and what he has seen change, like during his time as an SDR. The Ambition scorecard changed throughout that time. So we'd love to hear from Matt a little bit about what that experience was like, when his own scorecard was adjusted, and how that went.
Thank you, Kelly. Like Kelly said, in another life, I was living and dying by that red, yellow, green journey of my scorecard every day. It's a little bit different pace out here in the account management world, but that doesn't change the fact that this scorecard can be super impactful. So I think something that we love to talk about at Ambition is how different pieces of the platform can, inspire long-term behavior change in your reps' behavior. I think we talk a lot about the coaching piece, being able to do that, a lot of these longer term pieces. It's easy to overlook the power of something as simple as a scorecard that you're looking at every day to actually create an impact, not just for today, but for the long term. And that's especially true with my own journey as an SDR. Like many of your SDRs, I was terrified of the phone when I first started. Call reluctance was way too real for me. Very much an introverted person, picking up the phone was terrifying. And I don't even know how I found myself sitting in that position where my job was to pick up the phone and call people every day. But there I was with an objective to beat, targets to hit. And I think a really important piece of the scorecard to remember is that while so much of Ambition gamification is me versus another rep, or me versus them, me versus someone else, the scorecard is a great example where it's just me versus the number. And so for someone that is trying to overcome this fear, if you can turn those scary conversations where the phone feels like a prickly cactus into me versus one more dial, trying to hit, for me, what was the first target was 40 dials. That was 40 at-bats I had to get. That didn't represent being hung up on 40 times or 40 terrible conversations. It was just 40 times I had to click a button in our outreach instance and make a call, and Ambition was going to recognize me for that. So that kind of took away that attachment to the outcome, which we talk a lot about in sales. It's very important to detach from the outcome. As simple as you can make your task, the more effective you're going to be at it. And so for me, just hitting those 40 dials a day was super impactful for overcoming that call reluctance because the confidence came. So when I could break it down to one more dial until I was done for the day, I didn't have that fear. And so by the end of my tenure as an SDR, that 40 dial target, as you can see here on Brian's scorecard, became 60. And where most of us as a team were struggling and sweating to hit 40 dials a day long ago, now our team is crushing 60 dials a day. We've incorporated ways to recognize when reps go above and beyond their scorecard with things like workflows and triggers. So I think that brings up a really good point of how do you go about changing the scorecard? It's very important to make sure that the scorecard is a fluid thing. It can change, it should change as your conversations with reps are impacting what areas of the business you're focusing on. The scorecard should reflect that. But what's really important to remember is that these changes should be gradual. So if you look at our scorecard, we have 5 metrics. Mindy earlier referenced 3 to 5 as a really good benchmark. So 5 is certainly on the higher end of how many metrics we want to be displaying here on a scorecard. And it's worth remembering that we didn't do this overnight. We started with simple attainable targets of dials and emails, and then worked in these other pieces as we were finding reasons to do so. And as you're adding pieces to your scorecard, make sure they're aligned with the way you're enabling your SDRs. So for example, I look at contacts added to sequence. Make sure that the reason that got added to our scorecard is we're having conversations about how we can be better at prospecting, finding new contacts. So as we're having these conversations, we're getting new tools to be better at that. We're building that into the scorecard. So no rep is showing up saying, whoa, now I'm required to hit 20 extra contacts a day. I don't have the tools to do that. It was part of the conversation of the next step as our team, of our team. You look at talk time, is the same idea. Great, we're getting 60 dials a day. How long are we actually spending talking to those customers? So we're adding in these pieces as we are developing and getting better as a team. And then the last thing I'd like to point out is you can see here, a few of our targets have that maximum points reached next to their metric target. It's worth remembering that you can always set a maximum limit or a minimum limit on any scorecard metric. And it's good to remember or think about which metrics you want to strategically cap or leave uncapped. So a good story for us is we have become very much a phone first team. When I first started and I was terrified of the phone, I was trying to book as many meetings over email as possible. But we all know it's just easier to pick up the phone, get over it, call somebody. You're going to get rejected, but more meetings will come. And we've certainly embraced that mentality as a team here at Ambition. And so we have capped activities like the amount of emails you can send. So Brian can't show up, crush his 100 score with just emails, nor can he have one connect that's 30 minutes long because the person is just having a really great morning and they love talking to Brian, at 9 o'clock in the morning when he cold calls them. It takes a balanced effort. One thing we have left uncapped on purpose is that outbound call metric, because we do believe if nothing else, you're at least able to kind of put your nose to the grindstone and really grind out. It's 4 p.m. I haven't hit my 100 activity. I can at least make dials and know that they're counting towards that activity, because what's going to come from those dials? Connects, talk time, hopefully meetings. So we leave that purposely uncapped because it's in line with the mentality we want to have as a team of being phone first. So that is just a few of the tidbits that I've gained from my SDR time. If there's any questions about, what metrics look best in a scorecard, what metrics are worth capping, certainly reach out to our team, drop them here in the chat. We'd love to talk through that with you.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was great, Matt. Thanks for giving us the rundown. Loved hearing it.
Yeah, of course.
So does anybody have any questions for us? If not, what we will do is we will be sending out our recording to everybody with the deck. And if you think of any questions, you are always willing to, please reach out to support, reach out to your CSM. We're always here to help in any way. Don't be strangers.
And this deck has some resources and links to other FAQs, advanced tips about scorecards, and all of that good stuff as well.
Awesome. I don't see any questions so far. All right. Well, if there aren't any questions, then we can give you some time back in your day. But as always, thank you very much for joining us today. And we appreciate your business. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, Doug.